Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. I don't know if to apologize or we're just going to treat this like an experience. Doing my live show at 10 p.m. But you all know that I show up here live, fresh like a loaf of bread every single day. I did work tonight. I could have been here a half an hour or an hour earlier, I'm sure, but it was that time that I thought that I needed for myself to relax and watch how Jeff Bezos became the world's richest man. It's a 1 hour and 5 minute video. It's one of Evan Carmichael's uh, top 150. It is 50 great insights from people that we admire, people I never even heard of in well, I'm not sure. I probably did hear of them, but they weren't people that caught my attention, that I found interesting. The only thing that I might think of is that I thought it my father's interest in some of the topics that he was interested in. I found it interesting, and I learned of these people only through wanting to have better and deeper conversations with my father, right? My father was into people like Carl Sagan, David Suzuki, and I just finished reading David Suzuki's biography, and oh my goodness, it was so good. I'd have to say it was one of the very best books I ever read, only because it gave me a little bit of insight when we going in. I know we're talking about purpose, but why don't we start it off with a great example of somebody who was living his purpose, and yet in the end, right? He didn't know the end game. He didn't know what he was going to bring to the platforms, what he was going to bring to the world, what was he even going to bring to himself and his family and his friends, and it was all in those lessons. And we're going to send some good cheer for those of you who don't hang out with me very often. Hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and I live behind a fire station, so they go by quite often. For you guys who've been with me for any length of time, I'm sending good cheer. I'm always wishing for them to ending up at their destination with a false alarm where they can just turn around and go right back to the station. But I always take a moment and I always stop. Hello, Melvin. Hello. So we're going to finish off the word this week, and the word was purpose. But it wasn't my intent to maybe use David Suzuki as the start, but it comes to mind. But when I'm thinking about it, wait, what a great prime example. Somebody who never knew what the end game was going to be, what he was going to be contributing to the world, but always having that perspective. When I read his biography, like, you could see how he was led by his desires, but at the same time, having realizations along the way in his lifetime, and finding great causes for himself, and then being his own man and having great insights into his own childhood, and his great mentors, his great influences, which was his father. But he came from a world of difference, didn't he? Because he was living in British Columbia at the time with his family, and when the war broke out, his family was scooted into a concentration camp. Like, there was so much difficulties just in his own race, just in the world that was still untangling from a sense of prejudice that, he spent the Second World War in a Canadian prisoner of war camp. And now, if you didn't know we had prisoner of war camps here, we certainly did. But what an amazing, like, he could have grown up to be bitter and resentful, and I'm sure he had opinions, and I'm sure he had strong emotions to a lot of these topics, but he was never vengeful, like to force it down his throats. Because if he wanted to, he could, and the whole world would know it, because that's how big David Suzuki ended up being in his life, and how much he actually contributed. So when we talk about purpose, you know, it's not a comparison, not in any any way at all, but it's in my wanting to follow my own footsteps, follow my own influence, good influence, right? And we have bad influence in our life, and realize and trust that, knowing that I'm going to contribute, and I'm contributing now, and as I move forward, I will contribute more, but also, right, contributing to my own self in that movement, just like, right, David Suzuki did, by just living his life and following his desires, and following and falling, right? Not just following, but following into his circumstances, and have his circumstances realize experiences, experiences with choices, right? And then to be the person that he is right now, what he created in that purpose, because that's what it was, right? I'm sure he didn't even give it any, well, I'm sure he gave it thought, his movement forward. But I'm thinking, like, how could he have even known what the master contributor to this world that he would end up being, right? It was just taking one lesson after the next, and one experience after the next experience, and following values that he learned from a great mentorship. Like I said, his greatest mentor was his father. You could see it in every chapter of that biography, that admiration and that love and that respect, but at the same time, understanding that epigenetically, right, in traditions and in culture, that, things were kind of well, it's kind of talking about the, like, the music of your parents, or the music of your grandparents. You go, oh, that was just in the old days, the old fogey days. And that is true, and it does cause separation. And as we know, innovation, as it moves forward, we have strong ideas, but not all people follow along with innovation, right? They grow to a certain point, and they get steadfast in their beliefs, and steadfast in their well, projections in their life, and whether they projected it on themselves, or other people projected on it, or circumstances, right? Circumstances. Oh my goodness. I took care of the sweetest lady today. She is the sweetest lady. She's homeless, and she begs, and she never begs. Well, I'm not going to say she never begs with me. When she gets really desperate, she will come to me, but she knows my circumstance too. But we rely on each other to get through from day to day. But she's homeless, and she panders. I think they call it pandering, where she actually goes from person to person. She'll find a busy area, and she'll ask for money, and she's just the sweetest lady, biggest heart, lots of problems, but we all have problems. And if you don't think you have any problems, I mean, You're on the wrong channel here, right? Because it's in working through our problems and realizing in that mentorship that sometimes, right, there is a stop or a slowing down of wanting to make that movement. We can sometimes find ourselves stuck, and when we find ourselves stuck, then we just pass that down because, right, we're not doing it ourselves, that we become teachers at that point. And that's why it's so important just to keep moving, even if you don't understand. And you hear people, you got to find your purpose. You got to find your purpose. Well, I've been absolutely clueless. I'm not going to say clueless. Clueless in a moment, but the next moment opens up to something else. And like I said, that one lesson leads to the next lesson, to the next lesson. And all those lessons are just understandings along the way. And this is how I see it. And this is how I make movement. And so I give myself permission sometimes, because I'm always going to be moving, that I give myself permission to do the baby steps, the very least sometimes. But in that promise to myself and my commitment to my channel, to my commitment to my brand, and to that consideration to the people who follow my content, because if I can't be the evidence that I can't show up every single day, right? Somebody else will fail and give themselves permission to fail because, right, they followed Cindy's stuff, right? And Cindy fails, and we all fail all the time. And if I did one day not show up here, the only time I don't show up every single day is that one vacation time. And I usually shut right down, if not just for a couple of pictures or a couple of texts, just to let people know that I'm alive. But other than that, every single day I show up live, and I wouldn't have thought well of myself. And I've had my dose of guilt and shame for the day. So I would have felt terrible, terrible guilt and shame if I didn't show up today. But it was really funny that when I came in and, I had something to eat, and I made myself a cup of coffee, right? And I contemplated through that, gave my cat a little bit of attention, give her her treats. I gotta stop it. She's a big cat. I can barely pick her up. I gotta be very careful when I pick her up because I gotta kind of adjust and maneuver around that big body of hers. Like, I'm swearing, like she's almost as wide as I am. She's a big, oh, she's right there. She's huge. But she's adorable, and even if and she doesn't eat much food, but I feed her snacks, right? She likes those cat sensation things. She probably gets about 10 of them a day, but they're 1 calorie each. So I'm not too sure how many calories a cat's supposed to have. But I guess I could Google it, right? Maybe they're only supposed to have 2 calories a day or something. And I'm feeding my cat 10 calories, and that's why she's so big. But she was big she since the day I got her. Okay. So being the last day on this word purpose, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, right? And it's great to make us curious and to make us search and look and feel out. But remember what I said, that you really have to love what you're doing, because, if you're hanging out with me, you're probably a bit of a mover too. And at the same time, right, you probably judge yourself quite a bit. Maybe you have a little bit of that toxic shame. Maybe you have a little bit of that complex trauma, right? Maybe you're having a little bit of a hard time being your own person because you're taking dictation from others, right? You're making your movement with others. We do it in baby steps, and we find little ways. No matter what it is that you're dealing with right now, there is something that you can do, right? There is something you can do. Make it as painless as you can, because if you're thinking about moving in something, right? It's probably best to do it in baby steps, right? I have salvaged so many relationships by not turning something, well, to me, it's big, right? It's painful, it hurts, but you can twist it all around and you can come at somebody, and at the same time you could trigger them. And if you're hanging out with me, right, you're probably triggered, right? But it's a learning to move in those triggers and realize when you're triggers, right? And going slow when you're triggered, because you want to think while you're being triggered. You want to think how you're going to hurt somebody, probably, right? Because tit for tat. I played that game. I've played that game for the most part of my life, right? And I try and realize as fast as I can and make adjustments, and lots of times I would talk myself out of it, but it wasn't a good feeling, because if that was my intent, to make somebody pay, and I didn't make them pay, then I would leave feeling that they got away with something, because I didn't say anything. I was just going to make them pay, and in the end I didn't do anything about it, right? That's why I have a hard time with this word, um, turn the other cheek. It's not a word, a phrase, turn the other cheek, right? Because I don't believe in tit for tat. I don't believe in making somebody hurt because you hurt. But I do believe if somebody has done something truly wrong, that they have to realize that they're not getting away with something, that somebody actually realizes what they're doing, or sees what they're doing, or is going to do something about it, because it's wrong, right? And whether they've done something wrong to you or something wrong to somebody else, I don't think it really matters, because if you've witnessed something that was wrong, that somebody's done to somebody else, and you didn't step in, right? You got to take some responsibility for that. I used to get in a lot of trouble. I used to have to wear this big ugly secondhand pink dress. It wasn't even pink anymore. It was like faded gray. It was all full of frills. My mother found it at the secondhand store, and whenever I got in a fight, she'd stuff me in it, and I'd have to wear it for days or a week, right, as punishment. But it is what it is. And I kind of look at that kid right now and say, man, you know you did some good. You could have done better, but in the programming that you were in, you weren't supposed to do any of that. You were supposed to turn the other cheek, right? You were supposed to be not heard. You were supposed to be invisible, right? But you did good. And maybe it was just a matter of breaking some of those traditions, right? That old fogey, that's the way they did it in that day and age, right? It's not mind your own business. It's not turn the other cheek. We just can't, right? Because we're this close. We live in this digital age right now, that me and you, I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, but right this minute, we're this we're this close, right? So we live, obviously, and it's obvious, in a different world than in a world that our parents and our grandparents grew up. And that wasn't too long ago. And they're still around, right? And they're not a lot. Even the age group that I come from, right? Most of them, unless it was part of their job, hanging out on the computer was probably not one of their favorite things to do, right? Unless it was part of their job, or they were a gamer and they got into. My whole family loved gaming. My dad had the first Nintendo as soon as it came out. I remember we had Zelda, and we had the Goonies. Those were our first videos that we got. I played a couple of tapes, but video games were never my thing. And I like the productive part of it. And there, I didn't see anything beneficial about playing games, right? On the video game. I never felt like I was learning anything. I still don't feel the video games teach anything except for possibly resilience, right? Because we know a lot of these video games are very, very graphic, right? And because here in Canada, at the very least, a normal citizen is not privy to that, the horror and the traumatic events that happen on a regular basis in some places, right? So, emotionally, if we were to butt heads with um, those instances, right? If World War III happened or something, it would be very, very hard on Canadians, especially the younger generation, because it's already starting to come out of the system. Our systems are always already starting to calm, right? From Second World War, from what was going on with the first group of immigrants that came here to Canada from the Ukraine and from all over the world, right? And now our systems are calming down. We're like third, fourth, fifth generations here now in Canada, alongside the Indigenous, who are also, right, citizens of this country. They were here long before we were, right? But this is a free world. Yeah. Can't just plant a stake and, right, call it home. There's always technicalities and difficulties and obstacles along the way, and we adapt and conquer the best we can. But we could say that and then draw it back to the main branch again, which is finishing it off on this topic of purpose, right? And how about just moving forward, trusting that as we learn and as we open up to ideas, as we come to realizations, right? As we see that heaviness in our hearts and in our souls and our systems, right? It starts to dissipate. That all comes from getting one lesson and then taking another one and taking, like, oh my goodness, I will never feel that kind of stress ever again. I won't allow myself to feel that kind of stress that I put myself through my own choices. And I might not had even an opportunity to have any kind of movement towards finding my purpose if I hadn't at least gotten that one lesson to wake me up, to say, oh my goodness, this was holding me back. And I haven't done any gambling, not so much as a lottery ticket. I failed once by accidentally. They had a 50-50 draw in the basement for the seniors opportunity organization, and they had a little raffle, and so I bought one, but I shouldn't have filled the form out. I should have just given them the money and said take it as a donation towards the organization. But I didn't think it was gambling until I walked out the door and realized that was gambling. And then I said, please don't let me win. I didn't win, but that was only the one time in 4 years, right? And that just came from one realization. And there was, I thought, no hope for me. I have no idea how many times I cried myself to sleep or wasn't able to sleep at all because I'd be up all night trying to figure out how to get the rent or pay my bills, or how to explain to my husband why there was no gas in the car, right? No groceries in the cupboards, right? Because I was throwing all that money into the gambling machines, right? So proud of myself. And sometimes you don't see that progress, and that's the thing. You can't look at yesterday and go, "Oh, I'm failing. This is so terrible." Well, no, you're just looking at yesterday. Look at 4 years ago. Cindy was gambling. Cindy couldn't keep jobs, right? Cindy was sitting at a video lottery terminal from the time the bar would open until the bar would close. And it wouldn't matter if I won anything because I would just keep sitting there because it was just an opportunity to stay longer. I have no idea how many thousands of dollars, it's tens of thousands for sure, that I blew every year on those things. But in the lessons, right? And that's the thing. You just start taking the lessons. I didn't even know at that point there was a purpose or that I was even supposed to have a purpose. Purpose for me at that time was, where was I going to get my rent money? How was I going to pay my bills? How was I going to stop playing these gambling machines? How I was going to start gambling, right? And then I guess I started to pray, right? I'm not a religious person. I'm not denominational, but I know there is something or someone out there, right? Because these lessons come at the most opportune times. Not like things got any better, right? I stopped gambling, but then something else came in and then, right, I was still not able to keep my job and my life crashed, right? Still no purpose, still no purpose. I would never have thought that I would be doing mindset, right? I'd be working in understanding emotions, untangling those wires between the human and those other parts of us, those the programming and the right, so that we can get rid of those obstacles, that we can feel better, right? Feel better in so many aspects that once we start feeling better, the lessons come more often and we're able to deal with the lessons, right? And we know some of those lessons are not fun. They're downright scary, downright painful, downright heartbreaking, right? But if you can just understand, and maybe this is a lesson for me, that each one of those that we overcome, right? And we're able to hold on to a relationship, right? Or not self bad talk ourselves or bad talk somebody bad or be able to keep a job for more than 6 months, that you feel better, that you're not crying anymore, that your sleeping habits are getting better, you have a little morning routine, you find things that you love, right? You start appreciating what you have. And then you start appreciating what's around you, right? Knowing what you give in this world is what you're going to get, right? It might not look exactly the same and it might not come from the same source, right? But I believe that's to be true. Big paydays. Right? But there's that, right? I'm in this game too, and I'm a contributor, right, to my own experiences, just like anybody else, my choices. And I've made some doozy choices, right? It wouldn't have taken me so long to get here otherwise. Okay, you guys, we're ending purpose. That was a big one. There's lots of things we can talk about in this purpose. I've gotten so many lessons, but I think for me the biggest lessons when I go over everything, where I started, where I am now, where I would hope to be, understanding that it's not going to be there, but it's going to be somewheres, right? But I think that's my purpose, just to continue to take the lessons, just to keep showing up here fresh like a loaf of bread, right? Feel my way around just like everybody else is feeling their way around and understanding, right? If I'm doing this right, right? If I could be the evidence, I would have to say maybe that's a pretty good purpose. Nancy, oh my goodness, I've got something. I don't know if you like this or not, but it was at work and I said I was buying it for you, so I grabbed it. I only gambled one time, but because I have seen in the past where gambling could lead to where I was last time ever, never ever bought a lottery ticket. Good job, Nancy. Yeah, gambling is that instant high when you win something, that adrenaline, that happy, that feeling seen, being heard, feeling accomplished, thinking about all the things you're going to get, and then just putting that money back. Do you want to see what I grabbed you? I'm not quite sure what it is, but you'll tell me. You'll tell me what it is. You'll tell me what it is. Can you see it, Nancy? Do you know what it is? It says streamlined passenger car. Yeah, it's a streamlined passenger car. N scale. Do you know what N scale means? Well, I'm sure you do. And it's made by model power. Model power. I'm not sure if the box has been opened or not. But I thought, do you want it, Nancy? I'll put it with the baby clothes if you want it. Oh, okay. So you want it? Okay, so here it is. I'll give you a close look at it. I'll put it with the baby clothes. My free check. I've got a parcel for Kathy too, so I've got to send Kathy's parcel out too. Oh, and I got a little envelope full of postcards for Andrew for all those different ships. Yeah, so I'm gonna put this back in my bag. I'm gonna put this back in my car. Oh, so you know what number it is? Oh, okay. I'll put it with the baby clothes. And I'll get you some more baby clothes because I know you got a big family. You need a whole pile of them. But yeah, so I'm glad you popped in there. I'm glad you popped in. Mm, that feels good. Okay, so we're just gone. I thought of you, Nancy. I love you, dear. I really do. And yeah, I only wish good things for you. And if it made a smile on your face, you know, sometimes it's just in the thought. I didn't know if it was worth anything or anything like that, but I thought, Nancy likes her trains. Oh, and I got those little red rose tea cards of all the trains too for you. Oh my goodness, we're getting close to sending you a package, Nancy. Oh, awesome, Nancy. I remember your Halloween special. Remind me and I'll share the video, right? I'll share the video. Okay, you guys, I think I'm going to finish my dinner, get my pajamas on, and call it a day. I'll be back tomorrow. That's my good cheer. Oh no, I won't be back tomorrow. We'll be back on Monday with a new word. Ugh. That was a toughy word, that purpose. But you know what? Yeah, just to get on that thing, I think we beat ourselves up too much about that purpose. And I think that purpose is anything that moves you forward or serves somebody so that somebody else can move forward, right? Right? So, and it's constantly changing, just like my brand is constantly changing. I'm constantly changing, right? What I wanted to be 10 years ago, I would never have guessed what I'm doing now would be what I'm doing. But I'm taking in the lessons, understanding that the next lesson might get me a little bit closer, right? A little bit closer to understanding what that purpose is. Everybody, have a great night and we'll see each other tomorrow. Bye bye.